Give my wife your savings or pack your bags, old man. Those were the first words I heard from my son that morning. No greeting. No respect. No concern. Just a demand, cold, sharp, and delivered with the arrogance of someone who believed he owned the world. Including me. I stood in the hallway, still holding the cup of tea I'd made moments earlier. The steam rose gently, warming my face, but inside, a chill settled deep in my chest. My son, Daniel, stood in front of me with a look I had never seen before. It wasn't frustration. It wasn't anger from a bad day. It was entitlement pure, naked entitlement, as if he had every right to strip me of the little I'd saved after a lifetime of hard work. His wife, Emily, stood behind him with her arms crossed and an expression that screamed superiority. She didn't even bother to look ashamed. In fact, she looked proud, as though she had successfully trained my son to behave exactly how she wanted. I took a slow breath. Daniel, why would you even say something like that? Those savings are all I have. He scoffed. You're old. You don't need much anymore. You live here for free, Dad. The least you can do is contribute. Emily and I need the money more than you do. Need the money? I repeated quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. For what? Emily stepped forward before he could answer. For our life, of course. Daniel and I want to buy a bigger house. Something modern. Something that matches our lifestyle. And your savings will help us get there. My heart tightened. My savings. I had built that money by sacrificing everything: sleep, weekends, vacations, my youth. I had worn out my back working 2 jobs. I had skipped meals to make sure my son never slept hungry. Every dollar in that account carried a piece of my life. And now they wanted it for granite countertops and a bigger backyard? Daniel crossed his arms. We've talked about this enough. You either hand over the money or you leave. We can't support you anymore. You're becoming a burden. A burden. The word hit me harder than any slap could. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized that the boy I raised, the one I carried on my shoulders, the one I prayed for every night, was gone. Or maybe he had changed long ago, and I had been too blind to see it. Daniel, I whispered, I've never asked you for anything. Not once. I paid for your school, your sports, your car, your wedding. I sold my land to help you when you lost your job. How can you say I'm a burden? He rolled his eyes. Because you are. Times change, Dad. People have to move forward. Emily and I have our own life to build. Emily placed her hand on his arm and nodded encouragingly, like she was pushing him into battle. Stand your ground, baby. He needs to understand that this is our house now. Our house. The words stung because legally, the house was still in my name. I never transferred it, never sold it, never gave it away. I simply allowed them to live with me because I thought we were still a family. Because I believed my son would protect me in my old age the way I protected him in his youth. But clearly, I was mistaken. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice as if he was doing me a favor by speaking kindly. Just give us the money, Dad. Think of it as supporting your son's happiness. My fingers tightened around the cup. My tea had gone cold. And if I refuse? I asked softly. He didn't hesitate. Then pack your bags. You leave by Sunday. It felt like a knife sliding between my ribs, not fast, but slow and deliberate. He wanted me gone. Out of the house where he grew up. Out of the place where his mother and I had nursed his fevers, celebrated his birthdays, hung his school drawings on the kitchen wall. Out of the home where her laughter once echoed. I placed the cup on the table, afraid my shaking hands would drop it. Daniel, I don't want to fight with you. But those savings are all I have left. I cannot give them away. Then you've made your choice, he said coldly. Emily smirked. Good luck finding a place at your age. They turned their backs on me, just like that, and walked away. I stood alone in the hallway, feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my entire life. The house that once felt warm and full of memories now felt like a cage. Or worse, like I no longer belonged in it. I went to my room and closed the door. My hands trembled as I sat on the bed, and for the first time in years, tears rolled down my face. Not because I was afraid of being homeless, but because the child I loved had become a stranger. Yet beneath the heartbreak, something else began to stir. Something old, something sharp. A feeling I hadn't felt in a very long time that resolved that my son believed I was weak. He believed he could push me out of my own home. He believed he could take everything I had worked for. He was wrong. He didn't know the whole truth, not about the house, not about my savings, not about the plans I had quietly set in motion. Years ago, and he had no idea that his cruelty today would ignite a chain of events that would shake his world to its core. He thought he had power over me, but I was about to show him something he never expected. This old man still had teeth, and I was going to make him regret every word he said. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, listening to the muffled noises of Daniel and Emily laughing downstairs, as if nothing had happened. As if they hadn't just threatened to throw me out of my own home. Their voices floated upward carefree, entitled, utterly oblivious to the weight in my chest. Every chuckle felt like a hammer tapping against my ribs. By morning, my eyes burned from exhaustion, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Pain has a strange way of clearing the fog. Once the heart shatters, the truth becomes painfully visible. I watched the sun creep through the curtains, painting a soft glow across my room. This used to be my sanctuary. Now it felt like a countdown. Sunday. They wanted me gone by Sunday. 4 days. 4 days to pack, leave, and start over. All because I refused to hand over the money that kept me alive. As I sat up, something inside me hardened. A quiet anger, not fiery, not reckless, but steady and cold. An anger that comes from deep betrayal, the kind that changes a man forever. I stood and walked toward my old wooden trunk at the foot of the bed. Inside were documents, things I hadn't touched in years. Deeds, papers, letters, receipts. Memories of a life built with sweat and sacrifice. And among them, the one document Daniel had forgotten existed. The house deed. My name. Only my name, not his. Not his wife's, not anyone else's. This was still my home. Every wall, every tile, every window. It all belonged to me. I held the paper between my fingers as my heartbeat steadied. They thought they had power. They thought I had nowhere to go, nowhere to turn, no fight left in me. They had underestimated me. A soft knock on the door jarred me from my thoughts. Emily didn't wait for me to answer. She barged in with her usual arrogance. A fake polite smile plastered across her face. "Morning," she said lightly, as if we were close friends. "Daniel wants to know if you're ready to discuss the bank transfer today." I stared at her, the deed still in my hand but hidden behind my leg. "You two haven't wasted a minute, have you?" I said. She shrugged with an air of superiority. "It's better to handle things quickly. Daniel has already looked at houses. There's a beautiful 5-bedroom property he's planning to bid on tomorrow. But we need your contribution before the offer." My contribution. My life savings. The money I bled for. I swallowed the bitterness creeping into my throat. "Emily, tell me something honestly. Is this your idea or Daniel's?" She crossed her arms and met my gaze without flinching. "Both. But Daniel deserves better than this old place. He works hard. He deserves a fresh start. And what do I deserve?" I asked quietly. She blinked as though the question confused her. "You're old, Mr. Carter. Your future is behind you. His is ahead. You should be supporting him, not holding him back." Her words sliced through me, but I forced myself to keep calm. Did I hold him back when I worked overtime to pay his tuition? When I sold my land so he could start his business? When I took care of him after his accident. She frowned, uncomfortable for the first time. That was your duty as a parent. I let out a short, bitter laugh. I see. She stepped back, anxious to end the argument. Just come downstairs. It's time to do what's necessary. She turned and left before I could respond. I stayed still for a moment, letting her words settle. My duty. To them, that's all I was, a duty, a wallet, a stepping stone to their success. But the thing about stones is, if you step on them too hard, they can make you fall. I dressed slowly, deliberately, as my mind continued to move like clockwork. My plan was forming, quiet, hidden, deadly. Not violence. Not shouting. Not revenge in the cheap sense. No. What I had in mind was justice. When I came downstairs, Daniel was waiting, tapping his foot impatiently. His laptop was open with bank forms already pulled up. You're late, he snapped. Sit, let's get this done. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized the truth. I didn't recognize my own child anymore. The boy I once raised had been swallowed whole by greed, by entitlement, by the poisonous influence of his wife. He gestured toward the chair. Dad, come on. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I took the seat across from him, calm, silent, observing. He turned the laptop toward me. Just sign here to authorize the transfer. I didn't move. After a long moment, I whispered, Daniel, what happens after I give you the money? He frowned. What do you mean? Will you still ask me to leave on Sunday? For a split second, a flicker of guilt flashed across his face, but Emily stepped in before he could speak. Well, we haven't really decided yet, she said. The thing is, having an old man living with us in the new house doesn't really fit our lifestyle. There it was. The truth. Even if I gave them everything, they still wanted me gone. I nodded slowly. I see. Daniel sighed loudly. Dad, why are you making this so emotional? Just sign and help us out. I looked at both of them. And a new kind of calm washed over me, an icy calm that signaled the end of something and the beginning of something else. I'll think about it, I said. Standing up. Emily rolled her eyes dramatically. You're wasting our time. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. Dad, why are you being selfish? Selfish. The irony nearly made me laugh. Because, I said quietly, for once, I'm thinking about myself. I walked away before either of them could respond. And as I went back upstairs, a simple truth settled into my bones. They thought they were in control, but the clock had already started ticking. And they had no idea what was coming. I closed my bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, letting out a long breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The house felt different now, colder, heavier, almost unfamiliar. For the first time, I felt like a stranger in the home I had built with my own hands. A home filled with memories, now drowning under the weight of my son's greed. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtains. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up, joggers on the sidewalk, sprinklers spraying across lawns, birds hopping between tree branches. Life continued, oblivious to the storm brewing inside these walls. I sat at my desk, the morning light falling softly across the papers I had pulled from the old trunk earlier. I laid them out carefully. The deed, my bank statements, old photographs, and letters from my late wife. Her handwriting still carried warmth, even after all these years. James, she used to say, never let anyone forget your worth. Not even the ones you love. Her voice echoed in my mind, steady and clear, more alive now than ever. I reached for the house deed again, running my fingers along the edges. This simple piece of paper held the key to everything. They believed I was powerless. They believed I had nowhere else to go. But the truth was the opposite. I had spent my entire life thinking about others. Thinking about Daniel. Thinking about keeping peace, keeping family together. Even when it meant sacrificing parts of myself, But sacrifice becomes poison when it's taken for granted. Downstairs, I heard footsteps, Daniel's heavy, impatient pacing. He was waiting, expecting me to return like a trained dog, expecting obedience. He no longer remembered the man who had raised him, the man who had sat beside his hospital bed night after his car accident, the man who had taken extra shifts for years just to pay for his college education, the man who once believed love alone was enough to shape him. But love without boundaries only raises tyrants. I stood, folding the deed and slipping it into my inner jacket pocket. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. But I knew one thing clearly. I was done playing the victim in my own home. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard voices drifting up from downstairs, Daniel's angry tone mixing with Emily's sharper, cutting voice. "He's stalling," Emily was saying. "He's doing it on purpose. He wants to make this difficult." Daniel exhaled loudly. "He'll cave. He always does. He's too sentimental to leave. He'll break before Sunday." I paused on the stairs, the words sinking in like stones. He'll break before Sunday. They truly believed that. They believed age had weakened me, that grief had softened me, that I no longer had strength, courage, or pride. They had no idea I was stronger now than I had been in decades. Broken people often are. I walked down the stairs slowly, letting my footsteps be heard. They both turned. Daniel's expression tightened, not with concern but irritation. "Dad, we need an answer." Emily crossed her arms, her lips curling with impatience. "We don't have time for your emotional thinking. Just transfer the money today so we can move forward." I looked at the two of them, my son and the woman he chose over his own blood. I felt something inside me shift. A door closing. A chapter ending. "I'm going out for a while," I said. Emily scoffed. "Out? Out where?" "Somewhere I should have gone a long time ago." Daniel stepped forward. "Dad, this isn't the time to be dramatic. And this isn't the time to be disrespectful," I answered sharply, for the first time. He went silent. I grabbed my coat from the rack and headed for the front door. Emily muttered under her breath, "Unbelievable." Daniel frowned deeply. "Dad, don't do anything stupid. Just sign the transfer." I turned the doorknob and looked back at him. "You think the only stupid thing I can do is say no. But sometimes, saying no is the smartest thing a man can do." Their eyes widened slightly, not in understanding, but in confusion. They couldn't read me anymore. And that worked in my favor. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. For a moment, I stood on the porch, breathing in the crisp morning air. The world felt bigger, freer, away from the tension inside. My thoughts cleared like fog lifting from a lake. I walked down the street, past houses I had watched being built decades ago, past neighbors who still waved politely, past memories of young Daniel running with his school bag. Bouncing behind him, every step reminded me of how much life I had lived, and how much I still had left to live. I wasn't done, and I wasn't weak. After nearly 20 minutes of walking, I reached the bus stop at the end of the street. A bus pulled up, its doors opening with a soft hiss. I climbed aboard and sat near the window. Where was I going? To the bank first. Because power begins with knowledge. Then to a place even more important. A lawyer's office. Because if Daniel wanted to play games with my life, he was about to learn that experience always beats arrogance. He thought he held all the cards. He thought Sunday would be my end. But Sunday would be his education. The courtroom erupted the moment the judge finished reading the verdict. My son stood frozen, his mouth hanging open as if the world had suddenly shifted beneath his feet. The woman he trusted, his wife, sat 2 chairs away, trembling after confessing everything: the forged signatures, the manipulated transfers, the plan to seize my house and force me out. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply exhaled a long, heavy breath, that felt like releasing 20 years of disappointment. When the session ended, my son walked toward me with stiff, hesitant steps. His eyes were red, not from anger this time, but from the shame settling deep into his bones. "Dad, I messed up," he whispered, voice cracking. "I thought she loved me. I thought I was doing the right thing." I looked at him, my grown son, broken, stripped of arrogance, standing like a child who finally realized fire burns. "You didn't lose because of her," I said gently. "You lost because you forgot who stood with you before anyone else ever did." Tears spilled silently down his cheeks. "Can you ever forgive me?" I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Forgiveness isn't the problem," I said. "But trust. That will take time." Weeks later, when the dust settled and the divorce papers were signed, he came back home not with demands, not with pride, but with a broom in his hand, helping clean the same house he once tried to throw me out of. For the first time in years, we really talked. About mistakes, about greed, about second chances. And as we shared a simple cup of tea at the dining table, he looked at me and said, "Dad, thank you for not giving up on me." I nodded slowly. A father never does. That day, for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel cold. It felt like home again.